Hello, Reshma and Rahul from Medplum here, and we're here to share with you one of the most popular Medplum implementations. Rahul, tell us about it.
Today, I'm going to be showing our contact center starter pack. This is a reference implementation for a messaging center, both for messages from provider to provider and provider to patient. The key part here is this is an embedded messaging center that lives inside the EHR and has the full clinical context of every patient and encounter that we're talking about here.
Sounds super useful. So I might use it when messaging my doctor about my lab results, for example.
Exactly. Or when they're messaging you for a follow-up visit.
Makes sense. What's in it?
So one of the first key advantages of this messaging center is that we're using standards-based representation, so we can receive messages from multiple different channels.
What does that mean in practice? Like, what do you mean by channels?
So we can receive messages either from an in-app chat widget, from SMS or WhatsApp via something like a Twilio integration. We can even receive messages from email, and similarly, we can also send messages via those same channels.
Sounds useful. What else is in it?
We're also going to showcase MedPlum's WebSockets infrastructure for real-time messaging. That means that when a provider gets a message, they get an immediate notification that a message has shown up, as well as an immediate little bubble with the message contents.
Super useful. If you live in these apps every day, you don't want to be hitting refresh many times. So,
That's exactly right. And what we're showing is just an example. The WebSockets infrastructure is actually headless, so you could put your own UI on top of this and still get that real-time capability.
super useful on mobile, especially. Okay, what else is there?
The last thing we show you is that using Fire, we can have a threaded communication model. So that's a great way to organize all your communications. A provider can have potentially multiple threads around different topics going on with this specific patient, or they can group their communications amongst their care team based on which patient they're talking about.
Great. Super useful for things like charting or top of license care. All right. So now we're going to take a look at the application itself. Show us what's in it.
Great, yeah. So here I have the message center. As you can see, it's pretty blank right now, but I'm going to go ahead and upload our example data here. And at the top of the center, you'll see that we have two top-level message threads. One is just amongst the care team discussing Homer Simpson's vitals, and one includes Homer Simpson, and it's a message between the patient and the care team, and Dr. Alice Smith specifically.
Great. Let's take them one at a time.
So looking over here at the care team messenger, this is a provider to provider example. You can see that we have 3 participants here. So this is more than just bilateral communication. We can have multiple parties involved here. Each thread that we have has a topic that we're discussing. But in addition to that, we have the full patient context over here on the left. This is how we can have a medical conversation about a patient while also having their clinical context top of mind. We can see that
Really
Simpson has obesity listed as one of his problems on his problem list.
got it. So you have like the clinical profile, the chat, and then actions you can take on the chat. Great. What's
That's
next?
exactly right. So each thread has its own life cycle, so we can say it's active or we can kind of close it and lock it out. But what's actually more interesting is let's look at an example of a provider to patient message. So here again, we have the clinical context of the patient top of mind, while we're also looking at the chat. If I close this thread now, you'll see I have this new button called creating an encounter. An encounter is synonymous with like a EHR visit, but in certain contexts, this chat itself can be considered a visit or encounter, even though it's asynchronous.
Got it. So that's really useful if you want to create the chart.
Yep,
And if you
exactly.
were to reopen this thread for a second and send a message, what would happen on the other side?
Yeah, it just say you're allergic. Our WebSockets infrastructure would intercept that and in real time send a message over to the other side to Homer Simpson if he was logged into the chat app itself. And like I said before, we have omni-channel capabilities, so we could even configure this to send it via a different mechanism, for example, via SMS to Homer.
Got it. So this is something like intercom or help desk, but with a medical context and works end to end.
That's exactly right.
Very cool. Well, thanks for sharing this today. Were there other things that we should go through?
Sure. The last thing I'll show is how you can create a new thread, a new message. So here I'll just say, talk about Homer's Labs. I'll create a new, I'll add Homer as well as nurse. You can create business specific categories for your business. These are all based on Fire value sets, so all customizable. And we'll say that this is about Homer. We'll see again, I can say, just have this thread. I've got the clinical context. If I close it and create the encounter, you'll see that everything is pre-populated according to the details of this encounter, including that it was a virtual encounter and that the time period is based off of the time of that chat thread itself. If I hit OK, here's the detailed patient record for that encounter or visit, again, with the clinical context of the patient. So super streamlined. And like I said, those chat messages aren't just what's there in that embedded chat. They can come from multiple different sources.
Very useful. I think for all of those who are healthcare IT nerds like the two of us, this is useful in a number of contexts. One, if you're using Medplum as your primary EHR, you already have that encounter documentation built into your data store. Or second, if you're using Medplum as like a contact center as a sidecar to your EHR, all this data is completely interop ready, so you can synchronize it to your EHR and use it for example, revenue cycle or what other applications. It's a good use case. Other stuff we should go through?
Now that's it.
Great. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Rashma.